Joe talks about Joe. And now, your host, Joe Slepsky.
Hey everybody, welcome back to JoJo Illustrated. Today is issue 20. This is our typically Patron exclusive podcast where we go over every issue of G.I. Joe, Real American Hero, the comic book, in sequential order, and we go page by page, sometimes panel by panel, and break it down with a fine-toothed comb in a way that probably no one else is doing for literally every issue. Today, however, is one of those share episodes where we're going to share this with the community. If you like what you hear today and you want to hear more episodes that are just about the comic book, please visit my Patreon page. It's patreon.com/JoeOnJoePod. And for only $3 a month, you get full access to every episode of JoJo Illustrated. So at this point, there's 20 episodes of this entirely separate podcast, and you can listen to all of them via the Patreon link. It helps support the show. It helps keep the lights on here at the Fort Wadsworth Motor Pool. And I can't express to you how much I appreciate the patrons we have today and all you listeners out there. So thank you so much for listening. And today we're going to dig into G.I. Joe number 20. Which was released in February of 1984. And you know how we always start the show with the segment we like to call
You Was Saying,
where we look at all the other comic books that were on the stands during the same month that this issue dropped. Very important book this week over at DC Comics, Batman number 368. Jason Todd had been introduced just a little while earlier, and this is the first issue that he actually becomes Robin. He puts on the Robin costume for the first time, and it shows on the cover. He's kind of swinging through a page, not exactly through a drum like the original Dick Grayson Robin, of course, but it's heralding a new age. This is the first non-Dick Grayson Robin, and here we go. Batman 368. It's pretty great, pretty important book. Of course, Jason Todd would go on to become, well, frankly, dead, and then he would become the Red Hood. So, you know, there's a little bit though to go, little miles to go before he becomes the Red Hood, and this time he's still wearing the pixie boots and the short shorts and running around in a yellow cape. Jason Todd as Robin for the first time, Batman 368, pretty important. Over in Green Lantern 173, at first blush, you'd look at that cover and go, wow, that's Booster Gold. And then you take a little closer, no, that's Javelin. In a very Booster Gold-esque costume, but this is years before Booster Gold was even invented. And speaking of Robins, over in Teen Titans 39, I'm sure they had this synchronized, we see the original Robin give up being Robin. They both quit the team. Robin and Kid Flash both quit the team. It's got a great George Perez cover with the Robin costume hanging on the Titans logo and the Kid Flash costume laying on the ground. Of course, Robin would return in just a month or so as Nightwing during the amazing Judas Contract crossover. But for now, this was Dick Grayson saying, yeah, you know what? I'm a grown man. I cannot wear these tight tights. Please give it to that other young boy that you hang out with, Batman. Here's an exciting comic, Star Trek number 1 from DC Comics. I'm what my wife likes to call a late life Trekkie. Discovered it. I always kind of was a fan. I had a little bit of an eye on it, but never really enjoyed it. And then when we moved out to California, I had a lot of time on my hands. And I sat down and watched all the original series streaming and kind of fell in love with it. So it's very exciting to see this beautiful George Perez cover of the original crew warping through space. Now would be a great time to shout out to my friend Aaron Harvey over there at Trek FM. He's got his Saturday morning Trek podcast. I've guest hosted on that quite a few times over the last couple of years. And I urge you guys, if you like Trek, check it out. It's called Saturday Morning Trek. It's fantastic. Listen, he does for Star Trek the cartoon what I do for G.I. Joe. Now, we thought Robin becoming Robin was a big month. And certainly it is. No one's going to take anything away from Robin. However, the most important book on the stands this month is Swamp Thing number 21, which was the anatomy lesson. This was where Alan Moore rewrote the game for the Swamp Thing. He said it wasn't Alec Holland who became the Swamp Thing. Alec Holland died. It's the plant who thought he was Alec Holland. And that just subtle difference absolutely flipped and upended the game. This is really, we talked about this such last month. This is kind of where Vertigo started. This is where the modern Vertigo / Image style comic book started. And all right here, Swamp Thing 21. Same month that Jason Todd became Robin was the month Swamp Thing was turned on its head. That's a pretty big month for DC. I gotta say, pretty exciting month. And here's another smallish book that was on the stands this month, which is important to bring up now. If anyone's currently reading comics and they're reading the Doomsday Clock from DC, which is the Watchmen crossover with the DC universe, much like Alan Moore in the original Watchmen used the cannibal pirate story comic book within the comic book as a kind of meta commentary, Jeff Johns is doing the same thing within the pages of Doomsday Clock, except he's using, instead of kind of pirate cannibal horror stories, he's using old serial pulp films featuring Nathaniel Dusk. I'm not exactly sure as of this recording where Jeff Johns is going with that, and what the overall meaning is. We're only about not even a full halfway through the Doomsday Clock miniseries, so I don't want to make too much of a statement on it. But his interstitials, where Alan Moore used those pirate stories, his interstitials have been dealing with Nathaniel Dusk. And the Nathaniel Dusk miniseries first issue was this month as well. And this was his first appearance. He was a private eye investigator. It's a mystery story written by Don McGregor, penciled by Gene Colan, the gorgeous pencils by Gene Colan, I must say. And Don McGregor's no slouch, man. He wrote some really, really great comics, specifically over at Marvel with Black Panther. Did stuff like Panther's Prey. Talented dude. So Nathaniel, that's interesting. So when you're reading Doomsday Clock, know that it had its origin in 1984 of February. And now let's move on to Marvel Comics.
You were saying?
Captain America number 290. The issue itself, I think it was one of the first. Yeah, it was Mother Superior's first appearance. It dealt with this trio of hard German women who just were like Red Skull sycophants. But for me, what stood out, even as a kid, was this really, really gorgeous, very simple John Byrne cover that's got her black, she's like nun raiments on, but it's not really like Catholic nuns. But it's like her black cloak covers most of the page, and then Cap's outfit is done up in black, and the Falcon's in there, and so he's done in black. And then Jack Monroe, Nomad, is got a black outfit on with the yellow cape over it, and all the black blends into the Mother Night cover, all against like a white backdrop. It's pretty great. It always really, really stood out to me as a kid, and I bring that up this month because John Byrne did the cover for this month's issue of G.I. Joe, which we're going to talk about in a few minutes. So it's a really good looking cover, Captain America 290. And the Byrne train keeps rolling, man. Fantastic Four 263. My recollection of this issue is it was kind of a one-off, like it was a standalone story, like that interrupted the regular continuity, big time story that John was telling, if I recall. But the cover itself is stunning. Byrne always does good explosions, kind of fire effects, especially for the time pre-Photoshop. And you've got a car wreck, flaming car wreck with Ben Grimm kind of ripping through it, looking for Johnny Storm. And it's really powerful, especially knowing that they did this, by hand, using traditional coloring techniques, not computer techniques. It's a good looking cover. Another book on the shelf was Tales of Asgard #1. This was a reprint book that collected the Stanley and Jack Kirby Tales of Asgard shorts. They would run like 4 to 6 to 8 page shorts in the back of the Thor magazine for years. And this Tales of Asgard collection, I think it ran 2 issues, maybe 3. It pulled in most of the stories together and just kind of put them all out for you. It's been reprinted a couple times. In fact, there was a whole trade paperback a couple years ago with a cover by, I believe Olivier Copiel did the cover. It was during the Straczynski years on Thor. And they've recolored it using modern coloring techniques. So you get to see Kirby's stuff with a modern coloring palette. A lot of fun. So the reason I bring this up, so if you get a chance to read, not necessarily this edition is fine, it's great because the coloring on the early stuff is also fantastic. But if you get a chance to pick up the Tales of Asgard, any of the reprints they did, like the recolored ones, they really, really, really look amazing. To see Kirby's stuff done with a modern coloring style, and just gives it a lot more depth and form, which his characters were always dynamic, but oftentimes a little flat. I think not flat in a bad way, but just kind of flat. Like he drew flat faces. Like his guys were always steel jawed and things like that. So when you get this modern shading techniques on them, there's something to behold in them. And of course, back then, this cover was done by Walter Simonson. I think every issue I find a reason to mention how great Simonson is. So it's got Simonson on it. It's got Fafnir breathing on to Odin's sword, and Odin kind of overlooking everything. And they're a lot of fun because they weren't about Thor. They were about all the other supporting characters in Thor. Heimdall and the Warriors 3, and Balder the Brave, and Hela, Carnilla the Norn Queen, Odin, Sif, things like that. Very cool. So pick up Tales of Asgard. It's one of the more overlooked, really cool corners of the Marvel Universe. Everyone just focused on the stuff with Thor, but this stuff was just to the side of them. It's pretty great. And the final book I want to mention this month for Marvel is What If number 43. If you're not familiar with What If, it's the comic book where Marvel would take like one piece of their continuity and change it. What if Gwen Stacy had died? What if Spider-Man did join the Fantastic Four when he first became a hero? So he'd become the Fantastic Five, things like that. This was What If Conan the Barbarian was stranded in the 20th century. They also did one where this was later years. They did one with what if Wolverine was stuck in the Hyborian Age. And this cover is fantastic. It's Bill Sienkiewicz, who, first of all, if you ever get a chance to meet Bill at a convention, the nicest dude you'll ever want to meet. Follow him on Twitter. He's a fantastic follow. He does almost daily portraits of famous people that are in the news. Sometimes it's political figures. Sometimes it's if a celebrity died. He'll put a portrait together in an insane short period of time, and he'll throw it up on Twitter, or it's Twitter or his Instagram, but I see him on Twitter, and it is just absolutely stunning. And you're like, this guy just does such amazing stuff and so quick. He's fantastic and just the nicest dude. And this has Conan showing up to the 20th century, and on this cover he is pointing a gun directly at the reader, which is a sight to see. Conan wielding a pistol. So it's pretty cool. Check out What If number 43. And that's it, Marvel Comics.
You were saying?
Now, over in the movie theater, let's take a look what we got. If you remember last episode, January of 84 was bad. And I gotta say, February of 84 is almost as bad, with one massive exception, which just blows the rest of the month away. It's really, really the only movie to discuss for February 1984. It's a little independent film called Footloose. That's right, Footloose, where Kevin Bacon just stole our heart with his dancing feet as the young boy Ren McCormick, who just taught a town how to move and how to find themselves again and get lost in the music. Who doesn't love Footloose? I sure did. I remember once I went to get a haircut, and I specifically said I want the Ren cut, which looking back was a terrible choice. Kevin Bacon had terrible hair in that movie, but I just wanted to look like Ren from Footloose. So Footloose, that's the only thing to talk about in the theaters. So with that, we're gonna wrap up.
You were saying?
And now let's dig into G.I. Joe issue number 20.
Soon the whole world will bow to Destro and Cobra.
It's so true. It's so true. The cover by the aforementioned John Byrne. If you're not familiar with John Byrne and you read comic books, I don't know where you've been hiding. John Byrne is a living legend. He has done almost every character for both companies, if not all of the companies ever. He was a massive force on the X-Men, reshaped the Fantastic Four, literally reshaped Superman. He has done a ton of amazing work, and there was a good stretch in the 80s, and this was the period when he was doing a whole lot of covers for Marvel besides his regular monthly work. He would just kick these covers out, and this is a G.I. Joe cover that he did. It's a pretty great cover. Like it's pretty dynamite. The issue itself is good. You know, if you guys are familiar with issue 20, it's a fill-in issue. They took a break from after the events of the big wrap-up last issue of the Battle of the Pit, and they took a little bit of a breather. So for sure this was like an inventory style issue, but this cover is just awesome. You've got Clutch falling with no parachute, no jetpack, no anything, just over some like suburban kind of farmland area, and the detail on the suburban sprawl is wonderful. The look on his face is great. He's got the costume down. Everything about it is awesome. He even has his foot pop over the logo, which adds a pseudo 3D effect to it. It just makes it all the more dynamic of what's happening, and which is a really smart choice. There's a world where the logo just rests above his foot, and it doesn't pop as much. This is really great. And it's funny, if you look closely below, he's actually falling over a garage, like a maintenance garage. That's a tow truck. So this doesn't appear to be a residential area. It does appear to be some type of industrialized part of town. And there's one more big thing about this issue that we're going to get into on the next page.
Yo, Joe!
Another issue not written by Larry Hama. There's only a couple. I think last time we dealt with the Stephen Grant issue, if I were to go back and listen to the actual issue, the last Stephen Grant issue, I think I probably thought, I'm pretty sure I thought that was the only one that Stephen wrote. Forgetting this one, and then after I got to the end of this one, the wonderful IDW hardcovers, they really break it down at the end here. There were 2 issues of Special Missions Larry didn't write, and then 7 total issues of A Real American Hero that Larry Hama did not write. So finally, we're nailing it right there. Of course, issue 20, this is the last Stephen Grant one. Then it's all the way up to issue 119, where Herb Trimpe came back, and he wrote that issue, and then we skip all the way to 143, 153, and 154. So it'll be a while till we get to those, but we will. So let's put a nail in that coffin. 7 total issues that Larry did not write. 9 if you want to include Special Missions. And this issue is titled Home is Where the War Is. Open with a nice big splash page. You got Clutch kind of, he's leading the pack, and I like that Clutch is leading the pack, because knowing what you know, that he's going on furlough. What that tells me is Clutch wants to finish what they're doing, what they're in the middle of. You don't necessarily know it right now, but they're in the middle of a training exercise. But to us, it just looks like the Joes are getting fired upon. You got Wild Bill, Scarlet, Flash, and Gung Ho. Flash's face looks really odd. I think that tells me it might have been redrawn, because it's really just not dimensionally shaped right for the body. The rest of this issue looks great. We'll talk about it as we go along. But if you see the book, you'll see what I'm saying. There's just something about Flash's face that's just a little off. It's a great choice of angles. You've got a plane strafing in, and the path of the machine guns is cutting across this battlefield that like bisects the page. And what it's doing is it's separating Clutch, who's the star of this show, the star of this episode. He's absolutely the main character. It's literally separating him from the rest of the team. So it's subconsciously telling us this is going to be Clutch's story without saying this is going to be Clutch's story. It's a very nice touch. It's written by Stephen Grant. It's penciled by Jeff Isherwood. John D'Agostino and John Tartag did the inking. Rick Parker was on letters. George Russo's colors. Denny O'Neil and Jim Shooter did the editing. Let's talk for a second about Jeff Isherwood. Let's get to know him. So he's drawn for both Marvel and DC. His first full issue was Daredevil 203. He worked on Conan. He worked on The Nam, which a lot of you G.I. Joe readers may be very familiar with. He worked on Suicide Squad, Doctor Strange, Namor. If you're a fan of Marvel in the 80s, you've seen his stuff, absolutely. Specifically, I thought his Suicide Squad stuff was really strong. He did Spider-Man. He did some short runs, I think, in Spectacular Spider-Man. And I remember his Namor stuff was pretty solid as well. He's a real good penciler, and I think we see that in this issue too, especially for a book like this, which is licensed and so very specific to all the looks. And they might be looks that he may not have been familiar with. He wasn't drawing Superman, who had been around forever. He's drawing these relatively new characters. In fact, his Gung Ho I like quite a bit. His Gung Ho is really, really, really on point and in character. It's good looking stuff. Possibly the most exciting thing Jeff worked on is he did the concept art for the 1999 or 2000 released film, I think, Battlefield Earth. If you've ever seen Battlefield Earth with John Travolta's the Scientology movie, it is crazy. It's terrible, but it looked great. So Jeff Isherwood, nice work on Battlefield Earth, but that movie's crazy. And that's how apparently he got into doing movie stuff. He's been doing, according to his website, over 60 different movies over the years. Storyboards to like animation, prop design, set design. He did concept work for X-Men Apocalypse. He's been teaching some art in Ottawa, Ontario. So he's a Canadian kid. Yeah, he's a real talent. I like his stuff quite a bit. I'm a fan. If you check it out, Google it, you'll see it, and it'll look real familiar. You'll see his covers, and you'll be like, oh, yeah, I know that. I've read that book. it's solid stuff, and I think he did a great job with this one as well.
Yo, Joe!
Now, this top panel tips us off for the first time that they're on a training mission. It looks like Wild Bill. It says, we got to stop treating this like a training mission. When I first read this through, that actually didn't convince me that this was a training mission, because according to the animation, something's hitting those trees, whether they're bullets, or maybe they're rubber bullets, or I don't know what they are, but there are things getting shot out from this drone plane or experimental plane, and it is hitting the ground and hitting the trees, so they are getting shot at by something. That didn't strike me as being very training. And Gung Ho takes his plane down and on his lonesome with just himself. He knocks his plane out of the sky. And again, you see Clutch is in a hurry. Like, he just like, all right, smooth move, let's go, guys. And everyone else kind of warns him off a little bit. And so Clutch gets blown up by a landmine. Let's look at real quick before we go any further. Let's look at the action on this page. Top panel, it's moving left to right, so it's bringing your eye that way. Second panel, it's actually moving right to left, so it's taking you from Gung Ho back to that plane, so it's zigzagging, right? Third panel moves back to the right with there's an explosion on the right-hand side, right? Then it all culminates kind of in the middle with the big explosion at the bottom. You've got 3 panels laid out on the bottom. First one is just a kind of a setting the scene of Clutch jumping over a tree. Then you got a big explosion. And then Scarlet, her arrow, if you watch where she's shooting at the bottom, so you go zigzag, zigzag down in the middle, and then her arrow is actually shooting you, literally taking you to the top of the next page. I like this page layout a lot, and I'm gonna say it was intended. It works really well for me. If you were to draw a line on this, it would go zigzag, zig, next page. Let's move. Let's flip. Let's anticipate what's gonna happen over there. Well done.
Yo, Joe!
So we got the Joes climbing over like a ravine or a minefield. They're on a rope. They're kind of shuffling over, right? And again, Clutch very much in a hurry, so he's in the lead here. And a cardboard cutout of Hawk pops up. Clutch doesn't recognize that it's made out of cardboard, especially because like it is his hand is up in the air waving like hello, like hey guys, and also because it's made out of cardboard. So Clutch starts talking to it, and then that gets knocked over by a second cardboard. I'm pretty sure that's also supposed to be a cardboard. It's drawn a little 3D, like it looks like it could be a person, and it is saying the words "Die American," but I'm probably likely a speaker, and that's the one that they shoot down. But that second cardboard knocks down the first Hawk cardboard. Very funny, and I like that Clutch can't recognize a flat 2-dimensional image when he's on the move. Really makes me question his high-speed driving capabilities. And we find out at the bottom, get our first hint as to why Clutch is in such a hurry. He says, "Home cooking, here I come."
Yo, Joe!
All right, now this top panel, this was where at my first read through there's, I was confused, frankly, when I saw the 2D cardboard cutouts come out, because I still didn't really catch that there was entirely a training exercise. Now I went, oh, okay, I get it. The whole thing was a training exercise. That makes sense. So it's a nice little double bluff for the reader. They're also very smiley as they were very smiley as they ran through the like the minefield and stuff, which normally I would think on a regular mission you wouldn't be that excited about. And Hawk's got Clutch's furlough papers, which is his like vacation papers for the weekend. And he's talking about going to Asbury Park. Of course, Asbury Park, New Jersey. Bruce Springsteen. Another thing that we learned from this IDW hardcover is apparently Larry Hama wasn't just doing an homage to Springsteen. He literally was like treating Clutch as Bruce Springsteen. Like, fantastic. It makes me love him even more. And he was meant to be kind of the lead, which you see in these early issues. You absolutely see that it was setting up like a Clutch, Scarlet kind of, definitely in a romance because she wasn't reciprocating anything, but he was always like pestering her and always trying to flirt with her and hit on him, and he was a pretty major character. And then he completely drops out of the book, and that's because Hasbro didn't want to feature him because he wasn't on the shelves after that first couple of years. We learned he's got a vacation, so he's headed to Asbury Park, but he's got to catch the bus to Asbury Park. Now, Clutch is a driver. He's all about cars. Maybe if he couldn't take a vamp, I'm assuming he would have his own car with him on base. But he has to take a bus to New Jersey, which I just like the concept because it's kind of humbling for him. Whether or not that was the idea to do it, like put him on a bus and send him home, or they just did that to kind of give him, it adds to that like loner soldier coming back from war look. If you think about stuff like First Blood, that's always the best example. When Stallone, is walking into that town, if you put him in like a deuced out Cadillac, he's a conquering hero. But if he comes in on a bus and kind of has to walk through, and that adds something to the story. But I do like that Clutch plays chicken with the Greyhound bus, and he gets on for a ride for home for the weekend.
Yo, Joe!
And this is what I'm talking about. He gets let off, and it's like a Springsteen song. He is let off at the darkness on the edge of town. There is, I gotta think that there's buses that head to Asbury Park that get you a lot closer than on the other side of a giant bridge, a bridge that doesn't seem to have a pedestrian walkway. But this echoes First Blood, like it really does. Movies like that, where it's the soldier returning home, and he's not the conquering hero, and he's kind of humbled. And that's what's happening here. So he's crossing the bridge, and in a scene out of the pilot from the TV show Smallville, this car almost hits him and almost throws him off the bridge. Which, if you guys remember from the regular Joe and Joe podcast, our interview with Mr. Phil Morris, he was talking about he was on the plane with Michael Rosenbaum when Rosenbaum was heading to Vancouver to film the pilot for Smallville, talking about I get to drive this like fancy Porsche, and I'm so excited. That's this scene right here, except Clutch is not Clark Kent, and the driver is not Lex Luthor. The driver is Billy Klein, an old friend of Clutch's, and it's a pretty crazy experimental car. It kind of looks like nothing else I've seen. Like it's really experimental. It's kind of part Ferrari, not much of a car guy, but it's part Ferrari, part Batmobile, quite frankly. And by not having Clutch in his own vehicle, now he gets the excuse to jump in a car with his friend and catch up.
Yo, Joe!
And they go straight to his friend's business, this Watash Automotive. They don't go to Clutch's families. They don't go to like Clutch's mom's house, or his cousins, or, whoever he was going to visit in Asbury Park. Like, I'm not sure why he was so excited to go back home if he was just going home to randomly get in an adventure with this friend he hasn't seen in 20 years. But they pull in, and this Mr. Klein appears to be, Billy Klein guy, appears to be somewhat of a hot shot because he's able to tell the guard, like, don't worry about security on my buddy. I'll take responsibility for him. They do experimental engines and things like that. So he's high up enough in the company that he can kind of override that. Now, let's look at this page. Got pretty standard layouts. You got an establishing shot of this building. He's pulling up in the car, like a medium close-up on him as they talk to the security guard. A little bit of an angle on the car being parked. Standard, flat angle where we're seeing the inside, a bunch of guys working on cars, things like that. And then right when we get into the office, right when we get into Billy Klein's area of work, they're walking past a room that says top security. Clutch asks about it, of course, and Billy's response is, do me a big favor, don't even ask. But look at the angle they chose to do this with. It's got that Batman 66 Dutch tilt to it. So that tells me that there's something off about what he just saw. That should be a visual clue to us, if it's not obvious enough by the verbal, like, hey, it's a comic book. Boy, here's something mysterious. You want to tell me? No. Okay, I'll forget about it. No, of course it's not. Of course it's going to be something to do with the plot. But this Dutch tilt on the image also informs our feelings towards this Billy Klein.
Yo, Joe!
And this is hilarious. This is what I mean by Clutch wasn't coming back to Asbury to stay with his family. There's an apartment in the offices, which is fine. That's normal. I'm sure I know there's a lot of places like that. They have little living spaces there, so executives can wash up and stay the night, things like that. But that's just where Clutch is staying. Like, hey, while you're here for the weekend, why don't you stay here? There's no one expecting Clutch. There's no one. Like, he had nothing set up. He had no hotel room. He had no nothing. It's just, hey, crash here at my company. Okay, great. That's really, really funny. While he's in the shower, he overhears Billy in the other room yelling at someone on the phone, saying, don't push too hard, creep. You won't like it if I start pushing back, blah, blah, blah. And when he comes out, he's like, hey, what's going on? And, of course, that gets Clutch's curiosity up, so he follows Billy a little bit. This is all shades of that episode where Flint was it called Flint's Vacation, I think? The one where Flint went to visit his cousins, and they were all being brainwashed by Cobra. The whole town was. And remember that? And he went on a little weekend holiday, stayed with his cousins. In the middle of the night, everyone zombified out and went down into town. That's I got a lot of that vibe on this episode.
Yo, Joe!
This is pretty funny. So Clutch is investigating, what he was suspicious about, right? So he's supposedly going back to the door, the room that he walked by earlier. However, and this is all drawn by the same guy. It's all drawn by Jeff Fisherwood, and ably drawn, I must say. But what they didn't do is they didn't make this door look like the other door from 2 pages earlier. That top security door is different from this top security door. So maybe there were multiple top security doors that Clutch was curious about, but this is not the same door that they walked by earlier. Kind of funny. Once again, Cobra doing their best branding, because we know that's what Cobra specializes in. Cobra's all about the branding. Whatever hijinks they're up to here at this plant, we don't exactly know yet, but they have to wear their uniforms. They couldn't be in regular disguise. They couldn't be just civilian clothes. I don't know if they're stealing motor parts or they're sabotaging engines or something like that, but they have to be wearing their Cobra outfits, which this guy, of course, is, and that sets them off in a scene. It's akin to the luggage scene in Die Hard 2. He follows the guys in the back of the room, and of course they jump him with pistols, and he's got to use his environment and his surroundings to escape. It's a nice layout on the bottom 3/4 of this page where it gives us a really bird's eye view of the room. We see all these car parts and like workbenches in the middle. Clutch grabbing the only weapon he can, which is a wrench, and we 1, 2, 3, 4. There's 4 Cobras that are going to flank him. It's good.
Yo, Joe!
And Clutch doing his best. He clobbers one Cobra, hits him quite hard on the head with the crescent wrench, and then he realizes that his only option here is to get them all to stand under a racing car that's been hoisted above them, and when they get in just the right position, he hits the lever, and the car comes crashing down. It's a fun little pun, like a Schwarzenegger level pun of smarten up, guys. It's a trap. Like, you need a car to fall on you or something, as the car's falling on them.
Yo, Joe!
I'll tell you what this whole adventure feels like to me. It feels, and I realized it actually with this first panel on this page, where Clutch is he's holding the pistol up in the air, and he's against that top security door, so we can visually place where he's at. This feels like a Steranko Shield adventure, is what this feels like. The artwork, not as dynamic as Steranko, I think, but that's not saying that's no slight. Steranko's pretty amazing. But that this is the kind of thing that Nick Fury was getting in those early Strange Tales, where like he'd be off doing something, think he saw a Hydra agent, and then scurry off to kind of chase them, and runs into a whole cadre of Hydra goons. That's what Clutch is. That's what's happening with Clutch here, and it's this top image. That's what made me think of that. I like that a lot. We see that there's a whole Cobra bunker in this room, again with the branding, just in case we're not sure. There's a big Cobra logo on the wall. Bunch of Cobra guys in Cobra soldier uniforms, and Clutch doesn't even waste time. He just jumps down, and he's so mad with his friend that he doesn't even try to be sneaky. He just pulls a gun, trusts that his friend's gonna have his back, which is the wrong move because his friend clobbers Clutch when his back is turned to him.
Yo, Joe!
Clutch wakes up to learn that Billy's family is being held hostage by Cobra, so he has to play along. He's being suspended in the air. His hands and arms are all tied up. His arms are behind his back, and they're going to test this. So what we find out what they're doing at this plant is they're working on a personalized jetpack. This jetpack is even smaller than the G.I. Joe Jump jetpack. Previously, we've seen Stalker use it in multiple issues. You guys know the Jump is one of the early toys. This is like a waistband style jetpack. It's real small, and that's what they're working on. That's what Billy's helping them build. So they need to test it. And of course, they're going to test it with Clutch. They strap it around his waist. They open up the roof, and they send him rocketing away. But before they can, Billy gives him a hug, and as he does, he kind of slips something into his hand. It's a shop knife that Clutch can use to break his bonds. But he's still rocketing high into the sky through an open sunroof.
Yo, Joe!
And just because Cobra's a Cobra, they don't even let him give him a chance. As soon as he got high enough, they said, "Okay, the test worked. Let's kill the power on the jetpack." And so now Clutch is gonna fall back to Earth. The first time this issue, so we're technically not even at the cover. Him falling to this ground, not even representational of the cover. He has to pull a quick maneuver. It's a little reminiscent of that wonderful Iron Man issue when he's jumping out of the plane and has to put the Iron Man suit on before he hits the ground in order to save himself. And that's what's happening here. he talks about like stalker. He was a stalker. We're here to help him with this suit, and he has to rewire the controls on it in order to kind of reignite the waistband rocket pack, and he does, saving himself. Another here's something that Stephen Grant's doing that Larry Hama did really well, is he's treating these guys like professionals. Clutch is a professional here. Clutch does not freak out. He doesn't scream. He doesn't, flip out that, oh no, he's going to die. He's very cool. He's very collected. Look at that middle panel where he's like just calmly like working on the circuits on the belt. That's not a face of I'm going to plummet to my death. Nope. He's totally cool with it.
Yo, Joe!
In fact, I would say he's a little put out. I think that's the look you get. That's the look I get on this page as he landed in the swamps, the swamps of Jersey. Another Springsteen reference. So he lands in the swamps and he's kind of crawling out, and he looks, he looks a little perturbed, I'm gonna say. And he heads over back to his high school, or let's see, like his old shop teacher is there. This guy he doesn't look necessarily young, but I feel like he's too young. Well, no, that's not true. He wouldn't be too young, because really, and it really couldn't have been like 20 years. I think earlier I was kind of making a joke that he'd been gone for 20 years. Clutch can't be all that old. Clutch can't be more than, let's say, 30. So, he's been out of high school like 12 years. We'll say 12 years. So, yeah, his shop teacher's bound to be there. And a couple of goons are working on some auto car. And it's Mr. Vilski, good Polish guy. And he remembers him, Lance Steinberg. Clutch needs a favor. And this favor is fantastic.
Yo, Joe!
It is like a giant experimental, like, made of industrial steel hot rod car or something. I don't know what this car is. They never really explain it. Does every shop have a car like this? Like, looks something out of the A-Team? Like Mr. T put it together? Or is that the favor that he got from him? Like, can you help me put a battering ram on a car? Or did they already have a car available? I don't know, but I like it. And he goes plowing into this house. And we don't even know what this house is. It's just a hot rod plowing through the front of a house. Great angles, a nice sound effect, a boom sound effect as the car hits the curb and goes flying into the air.
Yo, Joe!
Crashing through the wall. And you know what? On the second page, it's a little clearer to me that it's a car that they put on some kind of like battering ram or something. It's funny. It's different inkers is what it is. One of them must be D'Agostino and the other one's Tartag for sure. Like, it's definitely different inkers. I'm not sure which is which, but the detail on this top panel is really solid. And within that's when the car takes on from less of a polished, like, chrome invader look to more of a slapdash. Oh, they slapped a bunch of stuff. It actually looks like wood in this scene, where previously it looked like metal. Battering ram on the front of the other one. Plows through the house. It's funny, this final panel, Clutch is literally upside down when he shoots that Cobra Soldier. Don't know why, but he is.
Yo, Joe!
And now we see what he's doing here. He screams Mrs. Klein, and we see that's Billy Klein's wife and kid. They were being held hostage here. So I'm assuming this is their house, and he would have known that, obviously, because he grew up here. And he gets on the horn, and the next panel, it says late afternoon. So the Joes have shown up, and they're all going to help Clutch assault this factory. He attacked that house early afternoon. So it's been a few hours, and Cobra either doesn't know that the Joes are coming, they didn't hear that all their guys were just ransacked at the house. I guess maybe they're not in constant radio contact. But either way, it's a good excuse to get the Joes in the action. And they all show up. They assault the security guard, which we don't know for sure that the security guard's working with Cobra. But they don't know either, I guess. So I guess their best is knock him out. But easily, if he's just a regular security guard, he may not know that Cobra's infiltrated the place. But he's assaulted, and the Joes use some ropes to climb to the roof, and they're going to sneak in from above.
Yo, Joe!
I like what Doc's word balloon says. It says a lot here. Have to hand it to you, pal. Those are Cobras, all right. Implying no one believed him. They thought they were just going to assault a guard, and they didn't actually believe that there were Cobras here. Rock and Roll's very excited to get in on the action, and they bust through the skylight. And yeah, see, the Cobra guards, they had no idea the Joes were coming. So they gotta work on their, like, let's stay in communication with the guys who are holding the family hostage, like maybe check in every hour kind of a thing. that's something they might do on their next plan. It doesn't matter, though, because the project's finished. So they're going to kill Billy. But before they can do that, Hawk and... It's funny, it's Hawk, and it's drawn with a beard, but it's not Rock and Roll, because Rock and Roll came in through the roof, and Rock and Roll wears the bandolier, the cross bandolier of ammo. But he's got a beard on. So I'll bet you that's supposed to be... Maybe it's Grunt, maybe Short Fuse. But they gave him a beard for some reason. So that's a little off. But it doesn't matter. The Cobra Guard, he shoots Billy Klein right in the shoulder in order to stop him from duplicating his work for Cobra.
Yo, Joe!
Top panel, really nice. Got a bunch of Joes fighting a bunch of Cobras. And to split that out to kind of make sure that we keep our attention on the important guy, which is this main Cobra here, he breaks the panels. And not only does he break the plane of that top panel, he also breaks the plane of the 2 panels below him as well. This is the guy that we need to keep our eyes on. He rockets out on that jetpack. Billy Klein's going to be okay, but the only chance Clutch has is to chase him with the jetpack. They don't want this experimental jetpack to fall into Cobra's hands, because then Cobra could duplicate it and they could have a whole army of people flying around in these super tiny jetpacks. As he's flying overhead, apparently the whole time Airborne has just been circling the whole place in his glider. It's pretty great, but it is... Joe's didn't have another vehicle. So he's just circling, catching updrafts, I guess, making sure everything is okay from above. And Clutch rockets past him.
Yo, Joe!
Really cool symmetry on this page. Look at these. There's only 3 panels. Look at these top 2 panels. You get the inverse, Cobra going up, Clutch coming underneath and to the right. Next panel, Cobra going down, Clutch going up and overhead. It's almost a yin-yang symbol. Like, that's beautiful. It's really, really, really cool. And then this bottom panel, which is pretty much the lower half of the page, a little more, maybe it's closer to like 2/5 of the page, with Clutch just rocketing right into the body of the Cobra guy, resulting in a cool splash page.
Yo, Joe!
And this splash page, this is the impetus for the cover. This is a good looking splash page, though. Clutch is landing a right cross overhead. They're gonna plummet. His motor cut out. They're over a bunch of gasoline canisters, so they're gonna die. But Clutch is okay because it felt good to punch a Cobra right before he dies. It's a cool looking page. He hit him so hard he knocked the bandana off the Cobra's face.
Yo, Joe!
Clutch has one chance, and that's to steal the rocket pack off of his Cobra enemy. And when he does that, he can't still hold on to the Cobra guy. So Clutch escapes, and the Cobra guy just falls and dies. Normally on our other episodes, we keep a Snake Eyes kill count, by the way, which is currently up to 16 people that we've seen Snake Eyes murder. We're going to have to maybe start a Clutch kill count. Clutch just straight killed this guy. Self-defense, of course. But yeah, Clutch kill count, 1. And this final panel is really cool. Just this like Rocketeer-esque zoom that Clutch kind of takes off over this guy. Like, it's a really solid issue. It's a really solid like spotlight issue. This is the kind of issue that special missions would do in a few years. This would have been a special missions issue for sure. Focus on Clutch.
Yo, Joe!
And we see that Billy's going to be okay. Doc is ornery. I like Doc a lot. He's kind of ornery. He's sassy. He's given Clutch the what for, what took you so long. And Billy's going to be okay. He thanks him for saving the family. And I want you to stay with us for the rest of your vacation. Here's the deal, Billy. You're going to jail. I know you may get eventually cleared of charges. I understand that. But in the meantime, Billy's going to jail. Clutch can't stay with you for the weekend because, first of all, you got shot. You'll be in the hospital. And then when you leave the hospital, you're going to jail, Billy. So... his nice offer, but I got other plans. It's because he doesn't want to hang out at prison. And, he's at all the rest and relaxation he can handle. So, of course, he's going back with the Joes to Fort Wadsworth.
Yo, Joe!
And that's it for G.I. Joe number 20, guys. What a really, 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 really great issue. You know what's coming next, guys. G.I. Joe 21, possibly the greatest fill-in issue of all time of any comic book ever. It's a legend. It's the silent Snake Eyes issue. The only way you're going to hear it, it'll be on our Patreon, so it'll be up next week on patreon.com/JoeOnJoePod. If you want to hear it, if you want to be a part of the show, man, go over there, reach out, Sign up, and we're going to do G.I. Joe number 21 next issue, next on JoJo Illustrated. And now you Joe, and Joeing is half the battle.